Hello and welcome to the RotD Deep Dive, spoiler-filled discussion of Happy Death Day. Now, I have a confession to make. This is the second time that I've recorded a review and a deep dive discussion for this movie, and the reason for that is there were elements of this movie that I railed on a bit in the first review that I did, and it had to do with some logical inconsistencies that I found in the movie. However, after recording and after putting the footage in the can, I went on with my day and went to work, had a shower, all that jazz. And while I was in the shower, I thought of the bridge, the bridge of logic of why it actually made sense, of the holes that I found. Notably, it was the fact that in the second loop, the guy that turned around as she passed the group of frat boys and the guy that turned around was staring at her, why he turned back around and joined the group. And the basic premise of this, the logic behind the repeating day syndrome storyline is you can be the only one that influences anything about the world. That's the point of the repeat. And I when I first reviewed this, when I first watched it, I was thinking, well, why did he turn around on the second loop if he didn't on the first one? That's something that has been altered outside of the sphere of her influence and is therefore either a clue as to what's going on or an error on the filmmaker's part. And it wasn't until later that I actually realized that it did alter based on her sphere of influence, that in the second loop she actually turned around and looked at him, which did change things. Now, I watched that very carefully because I did go back and watch that part just to make sure of the logic behind the correction of that, and I noticed it was still weird. Now, you may say, well, Mike, you're getting really nitpicky about this movie. Well, it's a repeating day storyline. It's a thought experiment. I'm going to be thinking about it, and I'm going to be trying to find holes in it. It's kind of what I do. I can't help it. I really enjoy these storylines, and part of the fun I have with them is picking them apart and trying to find those. It's part of the what would I do kind of thing. And after going back and watching it, yes, she turns around and stares at him, which you could say makes him turn back around and join the group. Now, it was a him. There were a few key elements to that. It wasn't the roommate dressed up as that, so it was still weird that she encountered somebody that turned around and was very menacingly creepy, that wasn't still the roommate, but dressed up exactly as the roommate with the hoodie and the mask and everything. The hands were very clearly male, broad, wide, veiny, Caucasian. On the second loop, when he turned back around, the reason he turned back around was, well, one, she was staring at him, and two, the group called out to him, and they said, "Hey, Mike." And you clearly heard a male voice call back, "Oh, yeah, coming, sorry." So it was not the roommate, and it was not the serial killer. It was some guy that apparently just wanted to have a moment of creepiness to him. And I even timed it. On the first loop, it was about 8.5 seconds between the time that he turned around and the time the camera cut. And it was about 9.5 seconds on the second loop between the time he turned around and the group called out to him. So it's likely that on the first loop, if we're following the logic, that the group did call out to him and he did turn back around in the exact same amount of time, and the loop did repeat. So the logic there is sound. It's still just a little weird that you had this frat guy that was dressed up exactly like our killer decide to turn around for no reason and stare at a girl walking by herself for 9.5 full Mississippis until his group called back to him. Just saying, little odd, but they wanted to throw it in. They wanted to make it creepy. They wanted to make it work within the context of the logical thought process. And after reviewing it, I really couldn't find fault in that. So, all right. Now, the one thing I did find fault with, and it was a glaring issue, was the timeline. The first and second loop, when she woke up, she was groggy, she was, looking for her pants, she was looking for the Tylenol, she was talking, she was like wondering where things were going, probably spending about a full 45 full seconds in that room puttering about. And when she opened the door, the roommate was there, saying what he said, and then, her day continued. By the third loop, it was pretty much wake up, panic, realize what's going on, and bolt out the freaking door. Now, when you have a 45-second discrepancy there, the entire timeline should have changed. She should have never met the roommate. She should have walked by him maybe at the end of the hall down there. She should never have seen the sprinklers come off. She should never have seen the frat boy fall on his face. She should not have been approached by the, save the world girl there. The sequence of things should have been off on that. If they wanted to continue having the same series of events happen, then they really should have kept her in that room for the same amount of time. It was something that was difficult for me to get past, and it was an issue that, upon further review, is still an issue. And yeah, again, Mike, you're nitpicky. That's what I do, especially when it deals with this type of thing. I love the repeating day storyline, and I'm going to find holes with it. That's pretty much all I really wanted to discuss is I marked it down for some technical issues. I marked it down for some plot issues in regards to why I found discrepancies in it. Turns out one of them wasn't, but one of them, and it was a major one because it kept happening. She kept leaving the room with different periods of time throughout her loops, and the same confluence of events kept happening in the exact same timing. So that was a pretty big issue for me. One other thing I wanted to discuss. Two. First of all, the director has apparently said that there is a reason for the loops, and it is embedded as Easter eggs, and there's apparently a pretty big one in there. I haven't found it yet. I haven't really read forums or gone through fan theories, anything like that. Honestly, this is not the kind of movie where, like Mother or Eraserhead, where I'm willing to really dig into that level. If he happens to reveal it in a sequel, cool, I'll take a look at it then. Otherwise, moving on. Now, I mentioned in the review that we as a society could come together and make the repeating day storyline. If it were to happen to us, we could make it a lot easier. And here's how. Think of a dessert. Not a simple one. Think of a complicated dessert, or at the very least, multifaceted. Think of, if it's a pie, think of the type of crust. Is it an Oreo crumb crust? Does it have a drizzle? Does it have whipped cream? Does the whipped cream have a special flavor to it? Does it have a little crackling top to it? Think of very fine details of your dessert. Put that in your head. Remember it. Lock it away. Don't tell anyone. If somebody comes up to you and says, my day is repeating, tell them your dessert. And as soon as you tell them, change it in your head and don't tell them the new one. That way, if somebody comes up to you and says, hey, Mike, my day is repeating, Oreo cheesecake with an Oreo crust and a caffeinated cappuccino whipped cream infusion on top, I know they're telling the truth. And we can move on. I have never told anybody that, ever. And if I had told somebody that, it would have changed, and so on. But then the day would have looped back, and then they would know it. And by the time it looped back, I would still have that in my head as far as my dessert. So that's how we can conquer that. Next time somebody comes up to you and says, my day is repeating, and they tell you your exact dessert, then you can skip all the formalities. You don't have to reveal any major life secrets of who you have a crush on or who you might have killed when you were out in Reno that one time that you were just with some frat buddies and you didn't know what you were doing and you were a little too drunk and you don't know. You don't have to do that. So there you go. Problem solved. Let's agree on the dessert theory for the repeating day syndrome. So thank you for joining me. I really appreciate you making me a part of your day, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you.